السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. إن شاء الله we'll continue with the book of الدروس المهمة by Sheikh Ibn رحمه الله. We stopped at we finished last time Surah الزلزلة. Inshallah we'll go through briefly inshallah Surah Adiyat. Okay, we'll go through Surah Adiyat inshallah. We did it before, of course, in the Quran class, but because of the book, we're going briefly through what the Sheikh rahimahullah mentioned about the importance of these surahs and to implement it in our life and to act upon them, because this is something that is used in our salah, and most of the Muslimin, they have it memorized to the end of the Mus'haf. So Surah Al-Adiyat, recited inshallah ta'ala one time. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. The translation: by the racers panting and the producers of sparks when striking, and the chargers at dawn, steering up thereby clouds of dust, arriving thereby in the center collectively. Indeed, mankind to his Lord is ungrateful, and indeed he is to that a witness, and indeed he is in love of wealth intense. But does he not know that when the contents of the graves are scattered, and that within the breasts is obtained, indeed the Lord with them that day is fully aware? So this Surah Al-Adiyat, and what is intended here is not to go through the tafsir of the Surah in details, but rather to just to benefit from it. First of all, to memorize it for those who didn't have it memorized. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by some of his creation, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, throughout the Quran is there, but it's not permissible for the human beings to swear except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they have to. And especially the al-khayl, or the horses here, when it's was used for the sake of Allah, for the fighting for the sake of Allah, something that the people, they would see and they would hear the sound that it makes when it runs fast, and the striking, the sparks that comes out as a result of hitting the rocks or hitting the ground in full speed and things like this. All of that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for people to use, to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be in state of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How everything is used only for the sake of Allah. So two groups or two types of people. Some people that would use it to bring the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unto them. Those who use it for to bring the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they fight the believers, when they oppose the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, versus the believers, those who use it for the sake of Allah, not for any glory to themselves, but only for the sake of Allah, to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. So how one favor of Allah or one creation of Allah can be either a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the total opposite. It become a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people when they're not grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a result of how they use it. So after the mention of after it's mentioned, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna al-insana rabbihi lakanud." And lakanud, kanud means that he is depriver of good. That means ungrateful. So that means this is something in the human beings. The human beings, what is in the human beings? The greed in every single human being. And we all have that, and we have to push that away with Surah, with the deen of Allah, with the love of Allah, with what we know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This greed is that as human beings, we don't like to fulfill the rights that is upon us in the most perfect way. You want others to fulfill the rights towards us. But when it comes to our part, you would find there are all kinds of greed and so much other things that can prevent the person from perfectly fulfilling it. And you can see that in even simple relationships, between the husband and the wife and things like this. You would find every person wants the other side to fulfill the rights perfectly. But are they fulfilling the rights that they're supposed to be upon perfectly? And the successful one is the one that is more concerned about his own self in fulfilling the rights of others. And what comes from people is he accepts whatever he can receive from them, or he have more concern towards them, how they can be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than just going after one's rights as the greed of the human beings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna al-insana li-rabbihi," to his Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lakanud. So can you imagine that? And how this is the Lord, meaning the creator, the sustainer. And how can a person be like that? But that's anybody would see how ungrateful and how evil the human beings are. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves from us that we constantly worship Him and be grateful to Him. وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ. And the human beings, he witnessed that. He does not deny that. This is how the matter is very clear. So, but وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ either refers to the human being acknowledge that, witness for that, or it refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is stating that the human beings are ungrateful. So it has some kind of a warning to the human beings that they should be grateful to Allah. وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. And the human being, as human race, they love al-khayr. Al-khayr here refers to the mal or the wealth, whatever is owned, whatever has a value. لَشَدِيد, very intense. And as mentioned before, if you want to perfect your iman, you need two things. You need to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes, and you need to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His actions and so on. And at the same time, you need to know yourself as a human being, so that we're not deceived. This is the beauty of the Quran, that it exposes what's inside of us. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says al-insan, that means a human race. That means it's myself, it's you, it's everyone. Some people, they work on themselves, and some people, they don't. So everybody loves wealth, loves whatever has value, and this love is very intense. So basically, be careful. Be careful with that love to the wealth, that you might not fulfill the rights of Allah as a result of that. Not giving the zakah, not using the wealth for the purpose of this life, being heedless as a result of the wealth, and so on. This is all comes from this word that is mentioned, the shadid, very intense love. And anything that is very intense, it's something that a person has to be careful of. And this is whether it's something that a person is attached to or something, a person has to be careful and to be warned against falling into extremes when it comes to these types of things. And that's what basically related to the previous verse. This is what makes the person ungrateful, is that he would put forward his own desire and the love that he has for the physical desire over the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and become heedless of the hereafter. So this is, again, one of the things that we need to remember when we look at the surah, that the surah reminds us of who we are, so that nobody would deny this. So we are, as human beings, ungrateful unless we do something. And we are having so much intense love of whatever of a value in this life, and unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala push that away from a person by looking into the deen, by looking into what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And in the surah also, it directs us of how to overcome these weaknesses in ourselves as human beings. The next verse, أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِذَا بُعْثِرَ مَنْ فِي الْقُبُورِ. Does he not know what's going to be when what's in the graves will be scattered, meaning in the day of judgment? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings out the dead from their graves, for them to be gathered in the day of judgment. Don't we know this? أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ. It's a question that it shows how can we have that contradiction. When someone knows that he's going to be resurrected and going to be, that we're going to die and we're going to be in the graves, and then after that we will be scattered, meaning resurrected, after being in the graves. So when someone has this knowledge, has this certainty, would he be then continue to be ungrateful? Would he then be continue to have that intense love of the materialistic things and the things of value in this life? This becomes contradiction in one's behavior and one's actions, contradicting the certainty and the belief in the hereafter and the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. And that within the breasts is obtained. That means all the secrets, all the intentions, all the hidden good and evil. Right? And that's also another warning that we should have of what's deep inside of our hearts that no one knows except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's physical good actions and there's physical bad actions, also in the hearts there is good and evil. So in the day of judgment, the secrets of the hearts will be exposed. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. And then people will be questioned according to what physically they did and what's in the hearts. And what's in the hearts, and by the mercy of Allah, it does not include the whims or the thoughts that comes, as long as it's not into actions. But the intentions, a person is doing a physical good deed, but his intentions to show off. Or someone have envy inside towards others, or even these things are mentioned in the surah. And a person will say, is it haram to have that love to the worldly benefits and the materialistic things? It depends on how the person would use it. And if a person acts upon it according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ, that means he's not among those who intensely love these things that takes him away from the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being humble and being basically fulfilling the objectives of one's life, which is to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we see very clearly the surah, and that's how we need to memorize it and to be upon it. It talks about the physical favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow upon us, and the things that makes the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior, the physical strength, whether it's in the time the horses, whether it's now it's whatever means of strength for the ummah to be strong, and the reality of the human beings, ungrateful. And part of that is that if a musibah, if a calamity afflicts that person, he forgets all the favors of Allah. Right? So ungrateful, so we have to do something about it. Warning not to be ungrateful to Allah, and also the intense love of the wealth and whatever has value, unless it's fixed with al-iman and the righteous good deeds, and then the day of judgment and the effect of that in one's actions and one's obedience to Allah. So this is Surah Al-Adiyat, and hopefully inshallah ta'ala everyone have it memorized and having our actions to be upon what we have in our hearts. When you memorize the surah, you have it in your heart, and if it's in the heart, that means it's supposed to purify ourselves from the evil that it warns us from. So barakallahu feekum, inshallah we'll stop here, and then the next class is the Quran class in 2 minutes. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, baraka Muhammad, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.